Hello. In the previous session, we talked about shaders. In this session, I want to teach you about textures and the shader editor section. I'm Iman and welcome to the Blender Software Complete Beginner to Advanced tutorial. The first question that comes up is, what's the difference between the shader editor and the material properties? Actually, in the material properties and this section we're working in, you can add as many different graphs or in fact various nodes and complex materials as you want. In this section, which is the shader editor, you can adjust settings and colors based on the default options it provides. Alright guys, in this section you can zoom in and zoom out using your mouse scroll wheel. If you click the mouse scroll wheel, you can move around here. The material section that we mentioned here is a slot. This is the material we worked on in the previous session. You can even easily change the specific names in this section. And whenever I change them, it immediately shows up right over here. Okay? That's about this section. I also told you about the duplicate feature in the previous session, and here as well you can work with it. Now let's work on this color section. In the previous session, we told you that we have a color section, which we actually call, underneath it, our material output shader is green. We have 4 distinct color categories to work with: yellow, gray, purple, and various shades of green. In the specific section containing the greens, which we actually refer to as shaders, their input and output must be shaders, or more accurately, shader editors. So if I navigate over to the Add option or simply press the Shift+A keyboard shortcut combination, I will show you the available shaders option right here in this menu. For example, if I specifically want to add a new glass material right here, I can simply connect it to my final output node, so that it gradually takes on a very realistic, transparent glass-like appearance in the scene. If I delete this and then go back to the shader section and add an emission, it will give it a more luminous look. Did you see that? In this part, with Ctrl+Z and Ctrl+Shift, it becomes more luminous. So pay attention, the green colors should always connect to each other, and the other colors, if for example, it's damp. If I were to put it after, this won't happen, but instead it will give us an error message. Now let me bring in the leather texture right here. I've brought in these leather textures. Guys, I downloaded these leather textures from the internet as images and brought them in. I've placed it in this section. Okay, let me go ahead and bring in a specific texture for the color. Now this yellow color you see here is actually our primary texture, or as we often call it in our workflow. These are colors that contain full RGB information, or basically they are the ones that give us all of our essential color data. Okay, on the other hand, the gray color is actually reserved for those colors that want to give us specific black and white information, such as masks or height maps. Basically, it's a section that's black and white. The purple section highlighted here is actually the specific parts where we work based on the XYZ framework, and that is exactly what we use and do every day. And actually, it is located right on the main XYZ section. Let's go to this part. Let me mention this point. I brought in a texture and placed it here. You can see the texture is placed here. Now, if I decide to bring in another different texture here, well, if I really want to connect this specific texture to that one over there, I will definitely need to create a new link. So I go to She. Either from the option or by using the Shift+O shortcut, I bring up the Mix Color box. Now here, I connect the yellow color to my base color, the first part, color 1. The second part, look. As you can see, this gray color has now turned gray, because my second color, if I change its color, it changes again. I have color. You can actually not connect anything to it at all. You can say, I'll bring in a mix so I can create a leather texture, and here I can change its colors or not. We want to connect 2 leather textures together. Okay, this way we connect 2 leather textures. Alright guys, after connecting the 2 leather textures, From here, just like in Photoshop or any Adobe software, you can blend them using blend modes. For example, I can set it to soft light now. The two colors are blended together. You see, this way you can blend them or you can leave it as it is. Okay, so whichever method you choose, let me drag this one over here. If you want to disconnect this, there are several ways you can do it here. If you drag it here, it will be completely removed. Okay? Alternatively, you can hold down the control key and perform a right click, not a left click, but a right click, to cut the selection just like this. Let me repeat, hold down the control key on the keyboard and right click to cut it. Alright, I'm going to place this on top of that. Okay? Alright, let me just mention one more quick thing here. Guys, I actually went ahead and added 2 brand new textures to the project. I want to see the before and after of the mix without the mix. If I press M, my mixer mode will be muted. If you go to any of them and press M, it will be muted. If I press M, it will be muted. This M actually mutes that section for you and it disconnects it so we can work. Alright, I'll delete these and I'll delete this one too. Okay guys, I'll press Ctrl+Z. I'm saying to delete it, besides the delete key, you can also press the X key and it will be deleted. So pay attention to this point. If you prefer to use delete to move forward, go ahead and use delete. But if the X key is closer on your keyboard, press X so it gets completely deleted and make sure you know how to do it. Let's move on to this section. Within our various inputs, we actually have specific parts of our textures that you can work with and use in your own creative projects. For example, one of the textures you use a lot is the texture coordinate, which, if I pronounced it correctly, you can add to the UV or any other part. Now, let me bring in a texture here. Okay, if I go to this section, here. Okay, did you guys notice this point? I brought the texture to the normal, which I connected to the purple, and nothing happened. This is what was created. That's why I always say, try to connect yellow to yellow, shader to shader, and maps to maps. Okay, I brought in the texture coordinate, and I can make some changes to it with this. Did you see? Changes were made, or I can even connect this to this part. Okay? And it will implement and maintain all of these changes for me. Alright then. Now let me close this window as well. And we will just let this one stay right here. In the output section, the very outputs, the color section is where you can add your colors. In the shader section, that's where you could add a shader, texture, vector, or actually the animation section and so on, which are available. Alright guys, I created a texture here. I'm bringing this part into UV edit. Look, now here I set the object to edit mode. Alright, in this section I press A to select everything, and with the G key I change the position of my material. You see? So that's one way. Another way is that you come here and now the texture exists. In the previous session I said when you come into the preferences section, here in the node section, make sure to check this node wrangler box, okay? So that when I'm here and I press Ctrl+T, it creates a texture coordinate and a mapping for me. You see? With the mapping section I can make changes. Alright guys, I'm going to select all 3 of them. How can you select all 3 at the same time? When you click, hold all 3 at once. This way you can work with them. Right now, I am going to change each of these items one by one, so that you can see the difference for yourself. Okay? You can see the changes. And that's it for this topic that you can work with. Alright, now let's move on to working with a texture together and show each other a texture. There are some parts in the texture section that we call surface texture. Later, when you work with it, you'll fully understand. First, before I get into surface textures, look, here we have a texture that's used as a normal texture, meaning this section here is the normal texture section. I have a specific roughness texture map here, and whenever I want to start my work, for example, I simply connect a texture node right here to this input. Alright, okay. Then here I connect a texture to my roughness, actually right here. It changes the roughness a bit. Now in this case, it didn't show because the material isn't suitable for this. All the textures, when you select your texture, it's in sRGB. And for the other textures, if you want to work with them, make sure to set their color space to none, meaning they should have no color so you can adjust their settings. Now, if you practice, you'll fully understand it. After doing it a few times, you'll be able to see it. Alright, let's move on to the texture. In the texture section, we have image texture, IES texture, and environment texture. Aside from these three textures I just mentioned, the rest of the textures are procedural textures. That means they generate themselves for you, they automatically apply the pattern and create it on their own. Let's bring in a procedural texture. I come here and press Shift plus A. Let me move this up a bit so you can see it better. I keep changing it with these numbers. Okay? Alright, now I'll delete this. I'll bring in a texture view. Again, I'll connect this color and this to this one. See? Its shape changed. Now, if I decide to change its scale as well, and actually, if I take the time to adjust all of these different settings once again, I can achieve something quite unique. As you can see right here on the screen, I have carefully viewed the results and successfully created an entirely different format than what we started with originally. I changed it. Look, I'm just changing these like this. See, yeah, it changed again. I'm making changes to see what happens to each one. The more you practice together completely,